Welcome to Call Favorite, the podcast that will not offer you fish.
I'm
Miranda Simmons.
I'm always like adjusting myself whenever we're like sitting, like finding the right spot in the chair.
Do you need some fish?
I do. The gift of fish.
Especially if you can catch the fish yourself. I'm not going to come and presume that you need a fish I caught for you. Only if it's
I'm Mike Altman, by the way. But yeah, I think that was actually, I laughed out loud.
I'm Miranda Simmons and I do not fish.
We will,
but some people are great at fishing.
I had moments
and they don't
where
need your help.
I really wanted to get into fishing, but it never worked
really?
out. It never worked out.
Is it after like watching a river runs through it? A river runs through it. Isn't that?
I don't know.
That seems like a movie that you'd like.
I've never seen that. No.
Really?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm inventing Mike lore now. I've just gotten onto my own. I'm doing fan fiction about Mike lore.
And we'll say which film this is we're talking about today in a minute. But yeah, the section where they talk about him giving him moment where we give. I cackled out loud in the middle of my living room.
Anyway.
Yeah, we're two religious studies professors trying to understand all these cult documentaries you can't stop binge watching. If you want to support the show or help more people find us, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Cult Favorite Pod. And be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and a review. And so our show is hosted on Spotify. And I'm going to say Spotify a couple more times to see if it'll help us.
Okay, sure.
Get pushed up into the algorithm a little more. But if you have a Spotify Wrapped that features our show, please message it to me somehow. You can email it to me or find me.
I don't even know the words that you're saying.
You don't know.
So for those listeners who need a buddy in their cohort of just
so if you don't know about the Spotify thing at the end of the year, which tells you everything you've been listening to.
Oh, is that called a Wrapped?
It's called Wrapped. Yes.
Okay.
It's a whole. Yeah. It's a nice,
all right,
fun piece of surveillance capitalism.
Sure.
But if we appear and you're survived Wrapped, I'd like to know.
The views expressed on this episode,
they're ours, for better or worse.
Hours and hours alone. They do not represent department or the University of Alabama. So we're going to talk about the mission, which is not strictly in the subgenre that we have identified as cult documentaries, but it is very much about the enthusiastic and emphatic donning of a mantle in the name of a religious organization that then is extended for better or worse onto the lives of others in ways that they do not ask for.
And I guess we can this is sort of a two-parter, I guess, in that we're looking at the next one we watch soon.
It's a very different documentary.
Yes, but it's about dudes going on adventures in a certain way. And actually, in some ways, my Scientology movie last time was too. We're kind of in a September theme or a December theme. What month are we in?
What month are we in?
December theme.
Well, yeah, my Scientology movie is what got us thinking about the next couple. And are you wanting to say what we're about to talk about? Next time, Mike's going to take us through Grizzly Man, y'all.
Yeah, so you've seen, ready. But I've never watched.
I have. Is it about Timothy Treadwell? Is it about Werner Herzog? It's really anyone's guess. It's about both of those.
I'll find a way to make it about me.
The stories we tell are about ourselves. That's really the punchline of so many of our conversations. It's decidedly a through line in the conversation we're about to have. So buckle in. What did you know before in relation to The Mission, which is about an evangelical Christian missionary who seeks out an uninvited guest spot on an island.
Uninvited guest spot. I did not heard of this documentary. It's a National Geographic, so it's on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But so I know nothing about specifically the story, but the world out of which John Chau comes is it's a very similar version to where I grew up. The whole missionary world. So growing up, my dad was a pastor in a denomination called the Christian and Missionary Alliance.
Okay.
CMA, which is sort of it comes out of the holiness tradition. So it's none of the fun stuff of Pentecostalism, just like
I don't know what these things are that you're talking about with
like,
the fun and but go ahead.
But yeah, but it like no faith healing or like speaking in tongues or anything. But it was very much a missions based. Like the whole thing was, it's in the name, was built around world missions, global missions. And so like every year there was a missions conference for like a month, or I guess it was like a week. I don't know. I remember. But like, so you'd have two missionaries who were on furlough, like they're back home and they're like taking a year off.
Okay.
And they would, during their year off, they travel around from church to church and they would be, each church would organize a missions conference a different week of the summer or whatever. And we usually have like 2 or 3 missionaries, and they would come and they'd have like this is the early to mid 90s. So they'd have the old school slide projector with all these images of like, Burkina Faso in Africa or wherever they were in like the Middle East or South Asia. And they would tell these stories, and they'd always have in like, they would set it up either like probably like in like the foyer or whatever you call the little entrance lobby of the church. Narthex. Well, now that I've moved on to high church, they didn't call it a narthex back then in CMA. But they'd have a table with like all these little like artifacts from around wherever they were from. And like the church, most of the churches that they would put like all of these flags of different countries all over the entire sanctuary.
Sure.
Like, and so these are, so
it's like the Mission Olympics or something.
It was and so you would, and it was like in some ways that churches would have revivals. This was sort of the version of that, like the guest preachers and all that. So like, there was ideas of like the 1040 window. Do you know about 1040 window?
Nope.
If it's between 10 degrees and 40 degrees latitude is where most of the quote unquote unreached people groups are in the world. And so people would talk about that as a kind of like target zone for missions work.
Oh my God. Wow.
So I knew Jim Elliott, the missionary who died in, I can't remember where it was.
Was it Ecuador or something?
I knew all about him, grew up hearing about him.
He's one of the stories that is very influential for John Chau and the denominational framework.
And it was interesting because in that denomination, amongst those people, like missionaries were more revered than pastors.
Okay.
Like those
because they're doing the work.
They're doing the real work.
They are preaching applied.
Yeah.
Or something, right?
Yeah. Like the job of the American church was to support the missions work of going into these other places.
Those who cannot preach, one might say.
That's right. Which is funny, being the son of one of the pastors and feeling like, man, these like randos are coming from around.
They were like
upstage him.
Well, I mean, this is part of what the document. I mean, it's a great deal of what the documentary is about, which we'll talk about. But like, it's all to do with these like adventure stories. Yeah. And so when missions work is wrapped up in these adventure stories, it makes good sense that the protagonists of those stories are these sorts of like hero.
Yeah. So and both my parents went to Bible college at a CMA Bible college where they train a bunch of these missionaries. So their friends from college were like all over the world doing missions work, and which would come in, and so like.
Man, oh man.
It was the thing. Like there was all that is to say, like there was very much a moment when like 11, 12-year-old Mike was like, I want to be a missionary.
That's the age for it. That's apparently.
That is the age for it. And so anyways,
all right.
So that all of that made like a lot of sense to me, but I will say, it was part of the impetus for my dissertation first book project, because as a 12-year-old, I knew where Burkina Faso was. And that got me thinking like...
Do you want to place that on a map for our listeners?
It's in Africa. I can't remember now. I did at the time. I had to know all these... Because that was like one of the places we had a lot of mission... I think there was a mission school there or something. But it got me thinking, hey, people must have... as soon as they were missionaries in like India, people in the United States had to have gotten reports back and know about it the same way I had my slideshows and, tables.
Sure.
So away we went on that project. But anyways, what did you know?
Well, I didn't know who John Chau was, but I certainly... the story that this documentary presents fits into a larger framework of the history of colonial contact and and the uses of religious rhetoric, the very close relationship that those have long had for centuries. And so that I certainly was familiar with. But the mission is about John Chau. He was a 26-year-old American evangelical Christian missionary who traveled to North Sentinel Island. Had you ever heard about that island before?
I had not.
So it's a protected island where a self-isolated indigenous group of hunter-gatherers defends themselves from outsiders attempting to make contact. I mean, they are kind of famously posited as sort of like the last completely untouched like tribe on planet Earth is the way that a lot of folks tend to talk about them. North Sentinel Island is part of an archipelago called the Andaman Islands in the Indian Bay of Bengal. That's where that is. So after attempting an intricate and illegal, highly illegal plan, because it is a protected island, Chau is killed by the islanders. And part of what it means that that island is protected is that the Indian government is not going to prosecute them for killing people who attempt to cross into it's like a 5-mile radius around the island is the limit that you can go to. So the film goes into what kinds of dynamics motivated his trip and mission trips more generally, which I guess you can speak to in more direct ways, and those dynamics that lead to his death as well. So that's what the documentary is about. And I guess we should quickly say that while the term cult is not mentioned in this documentary, which could be a conversation in its own right, like we talk about that a lot too. But while that is not mentioned, the documentary is very much brought to us by insider-outsider discourses and dynamics, the kinds of rhetoric that we wrap around our stories of us's and them's, who need what from whom. Like, that is everything to do with this. And it's all placed in the context of religious devotion. So, the documentary uses John's journal, which I guess was found after his death and given to his parents, and they then release it publicly. So we get pages from his journal and excerpts from that, as well as a long letter from his father, who is a Chinese immigrant and a psychologist or a psychoanalyst. So excerpts from his letter that responds to how and why his son got wrapped up in this mission work and you know, how he ultimately passed. The excerpts from that, as well as John's journal, are used as sources for like voiceover actors. So we get those kinds of first person elements, but it's
and animations, which are nice.
Animations. Did you like the animations?
I always like animations.
You liked that with the Heaven's Gate documentary as well.
Animations.
I'm never sure what I think about, but I do. I mean, certainly I'll take animation over dramatization.
Yes,
I'll take that every day of the week.
Because like if you're gonna you're gonna read something from a letter, you got to put something on the screen. I'd rather have an animation that. Especially these do a great job of. They're doing metaphorical stuff with some of the imagery in those various animations, but in a way that says like, no, this is what it's very clearly like this is our interpretation of what this is happening here.
Yes. I could do without either of them, I guess, because it is so much I think often whenever there is anything rendered representationally that way, there is I think for the viewer, it's more direct with animation that like this is an approximation, a rendering, someone else's interpretation of what's going on. But I think that the problems are still present of like not always super reflective representation.
That makes sense.
But more broadly, it's talking about the kinds of, again, dynamics that go into missionary narratives and how those connect up with a history of colonialism and imperialism, especially in relation to us-them categories, ideas about racial otherness, etc. At one point, someone talks about the romantic spirit of colonial era of explorations and adventures. That's really the driving force that is put in tandem with religious belief and devotion to a religious cause. So one comes hand in hand with another in this context. And so you can't really talk about those mutually exclusively. There is throughout, so much is about the power of a narrative on all sides for all parties. Yeah. So I do not have so much a rundown exactly of what happens, because I think that we'll talk about that as we both get to our respective points. I'll just mention some of the folks who are interviewed, because I think that tees us up in that way. So we get friends and colleagues of John who talk about what he did as pretty stupid, but also very bold and courageous. And I wish I had that kind of courage, that kind of thing. There is, and I think maybe it's not a subtitle, but I think one of the little descriptions on the cover art of the film is something like the fine line between faith and madness or something. Yeah. And so they're constantly sort of treading that boundary between courage and arrogance, faith and madness, faith and fear,
bravery. There's the different people that from that world, his sort of friends, and then they don't ever talk to his mentor, but kind of adjacent people. It's interesting because you see the variety of kind of theoretical or theological kind of, not ways of, there's different reactions to try to hold the theological system that they all share together, but there's different ways of getting there, which I think is interesting.
That is interesting. And I bet that you identified more nuance among those perspectives than I did.
Yeah.
Because I think that being inside that context in such a direct way perhaps allows for, I saw, an attempt to keep up and running it's that good bad religion rhetoric that we've talked about. It's this system is not in question. It's the aberration of, it's what you do with the system. It's how it's not, I did appreciate the fact that you mentioned that this is a National Geographic joint, and there is, at least in part, some self-reflexivity on the part of the filmmakers about just what kind of history National Geographic has and what part it has had to play in propagating these stories of high seas adventure and uncharted territory and the kinds of cultures that exist in exotic lands. That kind of exoticizing and fetishizing work is very much in the figurative and very literal pages of National Geographic, and the filmmakers, make sure at certain points, not just to talk about that, but you actually hear the voice of the, one of the producers or directors off camera saying to a historian who's our stories are about ourselves, and you can kind of make this about you in a way that's not cool. We hear them say maybe you could say the same about our film. Well,
and I think when they're talking about all of that sort of the mythos or mystique around the island and all this, they show National Geographic cover stories. So it's right. They're that was interesting. Yeah.
So we get the theological perspective of friends and colleagues of John. We also get, though, a historian named Adam Goodhart. He discusses in large part the history of colonial contact with the Andaman Islands. He wrote a book couple years ago called The Last Island: Discovery, Defiance, and the Most Elusive Tribe on Earth. I don't know. I don't love that title, but that's he's coming from that perspective.
Yeah.
And he has been to North Sentinel Island, but not in contact. Like he has kept his safe distance, but there is that that history that he gives. He talks about how the idea of, so for him, like he has this self-reflexive like story of, my arrogant 20-nothing self who wanted to, like he had that own sense of adventure that wanted to travel to this place. And now he has some distance from that and a critique of that. So he talks about the ways that our ideas of cultural and societal others simultaneously can fetishize them and romanticize them, but also in so doing erases their humanity or sense of just peoplehood alongside our own way of navigating the world. So specifically, he talks about, for example, the idea of people like out of time, that they are some sort of pre-modern, like escape the trappings of our modern world, a sort of Edenic, like island life that is untouched by our, modern conveniences or whatever. It again takes away a sense of humanity. And as if, the way he puts it, like as if modernity has to look only like one way. And why do we deny them their modernity? It's an interesting moment. I guess I bring that up in a specific way just to alert us, to not bury the lead, and to alert us to the ways in which it is narrative all the way down, that like even when we are trying to be reflexive of, like he's right about that point, but even in making that point, there's a presumption that modernity, like as a concept, is some kind of evolutionary progress,
right?
That like we should not deny them their modernity. And it's like, well, I mean, you're right. But even the way that we understand modernity is kind of,
we're so like evolutionarily red-pilled that we see time linearly and progressively, such that the way to be sort of, I don't know, the way to do it well, apparently, according to that chart is somehow that to give them modernity, not to say that the idea of modernity itself is
yes, correct, because it's a seductive narrative, not unlike cult discourse. We need to place things and people and phenomena and practices, religious and otherwise, inside of categories that make sense to our own way of understanding the world. So I appreciated very much his presence in the documentary, though, for sure. Like, take nothing away from that. It just it's always important, I think, to also identify the ways in which scholars ourselves are people who engage in discourses that implicitly advance certain kinds of ideas that we would critique.
And I think I will give a quick shout out to one of my favorite books of all time that I read in grad school and totally changed everything for me. Beyond Anthropology, Society and the Other by Bernard McGrain. Do you know this book?
Yep.
I love this book. Because it's built to, I mean, he really, in that book, talks about the role that evolutionary thought plays in constructing modernity and the primitive and all of this. Like, you can't have a primitive without a modern, right? And so I think, but it's a great book because it starts with the pre-modern period and the earliest European encounters with others of various sorts. It goes all the way through in a way that puts the kind of anthropological work that we think of with National Geographic, or even the kind of work that that historians do all the time, in a kind of context as like the next phase of that, making sense of the other.
Sure.
And it's It's a great book. It really, when I've assigned it to students, it really blows their minds.
Good. Yeah. And I mean, Goodheart is helpful in a lot of respects in this film. One of which is to talk about the history of British exploration in relation to the Sentinelese people, and specifically one explorer who was there for a time who legit took a family, he was studying the Sentinelese people, and a family died under his watch because anyway, he talks about these colonial histories. So he's really helpful. But we should never take our eye off of the critical ball, even in relation to scholars. Another one who gets interviewed is Daniel Everett. He is a missionary turned linguist. He was studying linguistics before, but he spent some decades as a missionary with a group in the Amazon basin. And so he talks to us from that perspective. So we have John's friends and a kind of Christian theological perspective. We have a historian who represents this scholarly perspective in relation to the history of colonization. And then we have Dan Everett, who speaks as a former missionary who did the work, who also was, and all of them, what the through line is for all of these different people is that they do agree on, or they do all recognize the appeal of the kinds of representations in media, in books, in movies that become so compelling to us, the kinds of stories that we want and the kinds of plots that we want to place ourselves into as adventuring heroes. But he, after some time, we don't hear about this. He is a kind of parallel missionary arc in the film itself. So as we are hearing about John Chau and what he wanted to do with the North Sentinelese, we hear about Dan Everett, and he's talking about his, he did the thing. Yeah. But then that ultimately resulted in a massive crisis of faith. And
I didn't see that coming. I didn't see the turn. I didn't see the turn. We talked before we started recording. I didn't see the turn coming. Which you're able
to identify the nuance among the theologians, but don't see the guy. And I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's
that. You would think I'd see the guy because I'm the guy too at a certain level. But yeah, I didn't see it coming. Funny. I think I wrote him off as an insider from the beginning, and then didn't catch the breadcrumbs that you must have caught. Because I thought that actually the moment where he starts to talk about that crisis of faith is very well timed in the story. Because one of the things about this, I think the way you lay this out with the different interviewees is great, because it's not really a documentary that's telling you a story, because the whole point is everybody kind of knows the story, the bullet points of the story. So it's more an ongoing retelling of the story from different perspectives in this way. And I think that that moment is well timed because it's right as they get to the part about Chau kind of making his plans and getting ready and getting all excited. So there's this, we don't, so there's, I think it's a really well done moment.
In a kind of classic narrative arc, it's that moment of crisis for both of them in different ways. He has a crisis of faith. He talks initially, very early on. And so I guess this is maybe also what cemented that initial sense of yours, that he's I recognize myself in his journals, because they all, the producers give Chau's journal, they have everybody reading parts of it and kind of interpreting it. And so he's this was the dream. This reminds me of myself. Yes, 100%. He recognizes that sense of mission. Another person that we hear from that I really, really, really appreciated is T.N. Pandit. He's an Indian anthropologist. I think he's in his 90s now. I think he's still alive. But he did make Once Upon a Time in the early 90s, I think 1991 or so, made very brief but friendly contact with the Sentinelese, with the North Sentinelese, after like 24 years of, I'm going to sail to the shore. I'm going to leave this thing. I'm going to get out. I'm going to
apparently it wasn't fish. He didn't leave fish.
He didn't leave fish. There were a couple of decades of just of unforced offering.
Yeah.
But and unforced contact. And so there were some photos taken when he did make contact. They traded some things. And then after, some time, like he doesn't say specifically, but the sense that is given is like a couple of hours in the afternoon. Like it was not, I went and spent a month and then it was time to go. It was like after we finally we make direct contact, but then someone makes a gesture that alerts him to the fact that it is time to go. Like you cannot stay here. And so he backs off with his team instead of staying on. And he talks about a few things. One that's important is of course they don't want contact because they've seen what happens. And one of the Sentinelese men talks about how the idea of an evil spirit who hunts men and captures them, which is exactly what, this British surveyor was doing as he went to so they've they've seen, there is a sense of, okay, this is what happens when contact is made. It changes everything and it takes over what was already there, and we're doing just fine. Thank you. But he also talks about what I thought was really interesting. He talks about the pictures that get published of that contact.
Yeah.
And how what becomes the sort of cover photo of the stories that get released of this indigenous group is them on the shore, pointing arrows. And so it becomes about the violent ways in which they will defend themselves from outsiders. And he's there were hundreds of photos of just them hanging out. Yeah. And the way that he puts it at one point is it would have been interesting if they had just published a photo of them just standing there.
Yeah.
And I'm yes, it sure would.
Yeah.
Because you and I talk also a lot about when it is that we try to make exceptionalism narratives out of stuff that's fundamentally mundane. And I think that that's what cult discourse in general relies on a lot of the time.
Yes.
And so this is another one of those moments where our need to other a group of people takes priority over the swath of data that we could pay attention to, except that it doesn't look like there's anything to pay attention to when it's people standing around.
Yeah, there's nothing. There's nothing interesting about people who just. There's no difference. There's not enough difference.
There's not enough difference. And so what we need is
might be the idea of people violently defending their society from outsiders,
stand your ground laws,
doesn't seem super different, frankly.
Sure, in all sorts of ways. So he has said, Pandit has suggested that, this is one of his quotes, that the happy survival of such human groups should be the test of a truly civilized society. That what the success story is that they continue to exist on their own terms as they wish.
Yeah.
And that is contingent upon and is predicated by being left alone.
Yeah.
And so that's the test of what he's identifying as like civilized society. Anyway, the other, I mean, there are others, but so we've got an anthropologist, a former missionary, a historian, some friends of John's, and then we also, not until near the end, like not until he is making his plans, do we understand some of the kind of organizational context for John's trip, because it's not like you can just go like this. He spent years preparing and trying to lay out this, again, highly illegal but very intricate plan of how to arrive on North Sentinel Island and make contact and establish ultimately churches and centers and whatever. So the people that he was working with are represented. So we hear from representatives from All Nations International, which is one of these groups, like I guess you were talking about with your dad.
Yeah, I mean they're a kind of parachurch, like non-denominational organization, from what I could tell. I did a little looking.
If you Google them, did you? So you Googled?
Yeah. No, he's right.
What was there?
No, he's there as like a martyr. I mean,
so if you Google them, John Chau is the first link beneath their website before About Us.
Yeah,
like just And so then if you click on that link, what you see is Voice of the Martyrs, which I guess is an organization. I don't know. Voice of the Martyrs honors John Chau as the Day of the Christian Martyr 2022 inductee. And then there are some critiques of this documentary, like it fails to tell the true story, etc.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a whole... there are certain sorts of evangelicals or Protestants for whom missionaries and martyred missionaries are all functioning as almost saint-like in a way. And so the hagiographies that you get of a variety of, I mean, it's all over the place.
Well, you talked about the team that the documentary does discuss a little bit, where like they spend some time with a group. They ultimately get killed, but like there's a pair of people, right? And then one of them,
Jim Elliot,
and so his sister or his wife
goes
with the sister of the other one,
and
then they make contact and like establish relationships.
And then she writes a ton of books. I think there's a movie made about them. It is. I mean, there are entire.
And then they go on like a media tour.
There are entire homeschool curriculums in which all the reading and literature is built, and the world, like the world geography, is built around missions narratives and like stories of missionaries.
Yeah. Well, because it is the what's called the Great Commission.
Yeah.
Right. Christ's.
That was the main fund, like in my dad's denomination. That was the biggest fund. They wanted people every year to give to the Great Commission fund that funded missionaries.
Well, so we hear about this as we get some theological framing for what was motivating John, as well as some pieces from his journal, because it is, Christ's call to his disciples of going out and preaching to all the world. But then there's also this like every place on earth has to hear the gospel before the rapture can take place. That's right. Like that was part of the theological
and that's not
message that he internalized.
Like that. I think what's interesting, or one thing that's interesting about this, is there's a variety of possible theological like rationales that can be deployed. So like the whole everyone has to hear before Jesus comes back. Like, yes, that's definitely out there. That's not what all of these...
it's not a universalizing...
People can be just as vehemently missionizing as John Chau without holding on to that one.
Yep. Or the idea that if you don't hear about... If you are not... if you do not receive that message and then you die, you're still going to hell.
Oh yeah, that's to me the biggest motivator.
Which is also not a universal belief inside of Protestantism, but it is one of the...
Yeah, I mean the idea that basically there are people who are destined for hell because no one will ever, like, that these people, everyone on that island is going to die and go to hell, and no one is stopping it.
Which is why the representatives from all...
One of the most interesting...
Yeah,
no, you say it.
Well...
This line is crazy.
The representatives from All Nations International, like from their perspective, it is his love for these people. It is a humanitarian effort to spread the gospel. One of them calls it the human right to say yes or no to Jesus. And so you're the one being arrogant if you suggest that they shouldn't even have the option to confirm or deny.
People from having a chance to get out of hell. Why would you do that? But I've never heard it phrased that way, as a human right.
Oh, interesting.
That's an interesting innovation.
Oh, for sure.
Also, like,
it makes total sense.
Oh, like, it does.
So they're using the same rhetoric of, like, you know, from a historian or anthropologist's perspective, there is an arrogance at work in presuming to make contact, uninvited. From their perspective, it is an arrogance to presume that these people do not deserve or need the right to accept or deny, like accept or reject the word of God.
And it's like, I don't know if you, like, when I drive to South Carolina, I don't know where it is along the way, but somewhere you hit these signs that say, they don't actually advocate for you to become a Christian. They literally just say, like, Jesus, please forgive my sins and save me. So it's like, if you read it out loud, you're going to get tricked into being saved. Like, if you read the sign out loud, you have prayed according to the sort of approach to how one gets saved, which I find incredible, because it's like, we're not going to say, like, come to our church. You're not going to say, you know, you should find God. We're going to, like, literally just make you read this thing out loud, and then you'll accidentally get saved. Yeah. So, I mean, which maybe that's a better approach. I don't know. But it's interesting to me for another level, because the whole idea, like, within evangelicalism, you have a large number, probably the majority, but at least a plurality of sort of denominations and churches and ways of thinking that are built around this idea of, like, you have to say yes to Jesus. But then you still do have a large number of evangelicals who are, like, Calvinists, who don't think that you get to choose, that God's already chosen, like, people are already predestined. And so it's really, I think there's which is where I actually know some people who were in the CMA, that missions world, who did not leave Christianity, but basically kind of became sort of predestination Calvinists as a way to, like, that was their way out. Because it then says, like, no, it's actually not about you. Like, whatever missions work we do it because we're told to by God in the Bible, but it's not our job to reach everybody or whatever. I mean, even in the 19th century, when the missions movement in the United States was really picking up, you had hard-shell Baptists who were like, this is a waste of time. Like, our hard-shell Calvinists, like, why are we doing this? We shouldn't be, like, we don't have to missionize. Like, that's not in the Bible. Like, because they believed in predestination. So God was going to do it. Human beings couldn't choose. You don't get to choose. You're too fallen. You're too sinful. You would never choose. Yeah. So it takes a movement from God to pull you out of the death of sin.
There are so many layers of, like, authority and different relationships to authority when it is that we appeal to authority and comply versus when it is that we deviate from. And then, you know, like, again, what he's doing is illegal, first of all, but also, even if you think that it's a bad law, you know, like, whatever, it's not that was never really it was it's just God's law is higher. Yeah. And so he even says in his journal, John does, when he is finally attempting contact under a cloak of darkness one night, by bribing some fishermen, he says that because there are, like, you know, ocean patrol that, like, monitor the waters, and he's like, God directly kept them at bay, you know, like, kept them from seeing us, and that was its own intervention, so that if I get by without being noticed, that is evidence of the rightness and the righteousness of this mission.
And one of the things we learn in the film, John goes to Oral Roberts, this Christian college, and I'm sure he took missions classes there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he had a American missions history course. And if you take that class and they start the first day with the first American missionaries, they were from New England and they went to India and they settled in Serampore, which was where the British missionaries at the time, William Carey, were set up, because Serampore was a Dutch colony because the British would not allow missionaries into India. And so they couldn't be in Calcutta. They had to settle outside in the Dutch, and then
Interesting.
And so like, if the story from the beginning is one of like, it's interesting because from the anthropological, historical, yes, missions and colonialism have this, they go hand in hand in a certain way, but on the ground, the missionaries and the imperial authorities were often at odds, right? And so, and so, if that story of, no, we always have to do this against the government authorities. We have to, if we're gonna go to Russia and hide Bibles in our carry-on luggage, right? Or we're gonna these are the stories I've heard,
right?
Like we're gonna sneak Bibles into China.
It's very Mission Impossible, like
it's like, and so you have this like. It's built around this kind of anti-government, not in the sense that we often think of when it comes to kind of the political right, but in the sense of like the government, the powers that be in this world, unbeknownst to themselves, are standing against the spread of the gospel and the saving of these souls.
You're a rogue hero who has to branch out and like go his own way so as to like fight for good or whatever.
It is very Mission Impossible. I'm sure there's probably a VBS.
The dock list lives on North Sentinel Island.
I'm sure there's a VBS program out there called Mission Impossible that's all about missions for the kids.
I wonder. I hadn't thought about that.
Somebody look at the Bible of the what's it called? Whatever, the Lifeway Christian store. This segues into what I want to talk about. Okay. Which is this question of interior experience. And when, like, one of the stories of this is John Chau relying on his own sense of God speaking to him, of dreams and visions, of his interpretation of the scripture of the Bible. And it gets at this, like, what I think is a really interesting kind of like tension and ongoing kind of problem to be solved within modern Christianity, which is once you say that anyone can read the Bible and anyone can interpret the Bible, and once you say that you don't need a pope, like after the Reformation, once you say like you don't need a pope or even a priest to mediate between you and God, you now start to lose any authoritative guardrails on the ability for someone to just claim their own divine inspiration, to claim their and so there's this ongoing back and forth across the history of people in America who call themselves Christians between like, people like the Quakers who were like, I have this interior light, I can say whatever I want. And then like the Puritans at the time who were like, no, you can't. And then they killed them. And so this to me, one way of it is because there's a point where somebody says like, no one told him that, what was it? It was not God's call. It was idealism masquerading as God's calling. And that's one of his like church bros, right? And that was to me where I saw like, what I was talking about earlier, like the different ways of thinking through what this means of like, okay, if he does that and I don't do that, does either I'm a bad Christian or I'm not as brave or I'm not as good a Christian, which one person says in the show, in the film, or I recognize that individual inspiration has to be mediated by, other people in scripture, or there's like a whole host of reasons that one might like, but it's this idea that somehow if I have an authentic experience, that's enough to like that authenticity and authority go hand in hand.
I mean, this is, again, part of the purchase of and traction of the bad religion rhetoric. Like his father says that too. Like his father has massive critiques of, I mean, he does not mince words about
extreme evangelical fanaticism.
Yep. But I mean, but the way that he's a Christian, his father, but he does not agree with, radical evangelical take on the Great Commission, which he describes as being distorted for hidden colonial and imperialist agendas. So again, it's the aberration of the thing, the manipulation of the thing. And so while, you know, whether or not those are debates or problems to have and solve inside of a community of insider participants, like what becomes curious and interesting for us as scholars paying attention to these stories is exactly how tangled those different layers of those layers of authority and power and again, like compliance versus deviation become. And because, I mean, this is like Goodhart says at one point, everyone comes with a narrative arc. Yeah. And, you know, and he's speaking specifically about the island, and like the island is a stage and we all perform our own stuff, and that there's something corrupt about our telling this story at all. So he's like talking again, like as a historian, as someone interested in anthropology, but we have to accept we're talking about us and not them. So I agree. Again, he's talking specifically about the island and our stories about them, but I would say that there is the same phenomenon at work when we're talking about any of this stuff. Like what are the, you know, modes of authoritative discourse inside of evangelical Christianity, and what do they have to do with missions work? Well, that's a stage, and we're performing our own stuff. You know what I mean? The answer to your question is okay, we're talking about us, not them. You know, but because we're always projecting our own norms in that way.
That's why I led this episode off with my own lore, because that's really what this
I really liked,
what this is about.
You know, one of the things that that he talks about is the so much of what kind of promotes and distributes these elements of lore and these adventure stories that hook into us and then see us wanting to take to the high seas or whatever are these photographs, are these media representations. And so again, we see this kind of like little montage moment of National Geographic kind of doing that work. But he talks about the ways in which, you know, photographs are said to capture people and images or whatever. And so there are figurative and literal uses of that term. And it's interesting. It was a useful reminder that like colonial contact and human engagement is never removed from a certain modality of media representation.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? Whether media representation means, you know, oral traditions and stories that we're telling, or whether it means like glossy photos in a magazine, there is always this attempt to capture.
Yeah. Like, to go back to, like, to my dad's denomination, they used to send out, I mean, this was in the 90s, VHS tapes every month. It was, what was it called? Something Missions Magazine.
Okay.
But it was videos from all over the world.
Yeah.
So you could sit there and you could see all the different, like all these different people from all these different places. And the idea was that you're going to, like, you know, show them in Sunday school or whatever.
And as far as Dan Everett is concerned, the former missionary, like he says near the end of the documentary, like, the happy, like we have a sense of what would be a happy ending. You know, we have a way of like plotting different kinds of narrative points that would just sort of slot into a convenient package of this happens and then this and then this and then this. And we figure out some sort of like equanimity in whatever ways, blah, blah, blah. But as far as the North Sentinelese are concerned, like the happy ending for them is just that nobody ever learns their story.
Yeah.
Like we are looking for, what actually happened to him. His body was never recovered. Like different kinds of things of like, we want knowledge in order to make sense. But that is its own kind of intellectual imperialism that I need knowledge to make sense because I want it. I'm owed it. Like I need to serve the knowledge just because you want it. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, maybe their story just isn't for you. It's not about you. But like the stories we tell, if we are going to a place where, like, if we have the resources and wherewithal to tell a story or to name a thing or to use a label, we are necessarily talking about ourselves.
Yes.
And so in that way, the kind of imperialist aspect of that then is that we think that our stories about other cultures or other societies are somehow about them. That like I am, organizing this space because it is a space that I'm discovering. And it didn't exist until I, like planted a flag there or put a name to it or represented it in a photograph. When it's all of that is about your mission and it's not about the people you're actually talking about.
Yeah. I mean, there's a part near the end where one of his friends says like, it was interesting because the way he starts with the statement, he's saying, this was not what, some people say that Jonathan, he lived out his dream, but really his dream would have been to marry that girl, to be in the military or to be a cop in a small town.
John should have been a cop in a small town. That's what.
And then he goes, but he gave his whole life to Jesus or something like that. Like that, like actually, which was I didn't expect that swerve, but like at the end of the statement, because it was like this idea of like, no, he took his dream.
That's why it was a sacrifice.
Right. And and that's why he's a martyr. Up his dream.
Sure.
Right. And to do this thing that really he probably like no one would want to do this.
Literally a martyr is oh man. I just again like the ways that we classify and the ways that we use certain labels to talk about human behavior is always so fascinating because literally this story from one perspective, right? We don't want to say like it's really about, but like from a very pragmatic perspective, like a place that is known to not desire outsiders who will defend the borders of their island with force because they deem it necessary. You went anyway because of your own stuff. And the inevitable happened because it's what you know to happen. That's what it's not really the story of like, this whatever, like the Catholic queen is in power and she's burning Protestants at the stake, but I refuse to abandon my blah, blah, blah. Like it's, and I'm not suggesting that that's an adequate like place to put the martyr category.
That's a real martyr.
It's right. Like that's not what I'm suggesting. It's just where the fact that this story is then placed in a 21st century sensibility or ethos, like that he is he's the martyr of 2022, you know, like literally. And so, or at least nominated for it or whatever.
There's a martyr every year. I know. I think that's because Everett talks about Fox's books, The Martyr, early in the thing, which and my immediate thought was like, that's about Catholics.
I was going to ask if you knew. I was not familiar with that. Like, what is the Book of Martyrs?
So it was written by a Calvinist. Fox was a Calvinist Anglican, and basically it was about the ways under Catholic rule that Protestants were being executed and all these different
because
things.
Everett identifies it as like, this is something we all had to learn.
Right. And it is
these
something
are our
people learn.
heroes.
It's part of this larger, like, kind of the, like, it's like the great books of American Protestantism.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's about people who were on the it is written by someone after they've regained political power about how much it sucked when the Catholics had political power.
Okay.
And is part of a larger Reformation polemical thing, right?
Okay.
And to use that, like it's I think he is right that modern contemporary missionaries are the same way I talked about William Carey or these other missionaries early on. They read these same stories, and so Chau becomes a martyr because he dies, quote unquote, dies for the faith in a completely inverted power arrangement from the one documented in the Book of Martyrs, which was a self-polemical in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, we're being persecuted by the Catholic Church. We're in this part of political struggle. It's that kind of, and then now we put those martyrs alongside martyrs like Jim Elliot or like John Chau, who come in as with with power, with
organizational backing,
and technological power, and those deaths are now lumped into this larger thing. So in that way, martyr, much as we've seen with the word cult, becomes expanded and contracted in a variety of ways. I mean, we saw it with the Shiny Happy People season 2, talking about the girl who died in Columbine. Yeah. Right, was a martyr in this way, right, which is very different from John Chau and very different from Fox's book, right? For sure. This is the power of identity and narrative together.
Yeah. And that you never have one without the other. You never have something called identity without something called narrative. You never have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, I think it's. Part of it too is making, like, John Chau followed his brand of evangelicalism to its logical end. Like there's, I don't know, you hear this sometimes. I mean, I've heard this before, maybe you have, but like people are like, if everyone, if you really took, that kind of form of Christianity seriously, if hell is a real place, then why are you working a 9-to-5 job? Like, right?
Sure.
And I think there's a lot, like, there's a way that the film works incredibly well for a variety of audiences because there are enough places that the viewer will find the other. Whether it's John Chau
as fringe Christianity.
Yes. Or, whether it's as an evangelical and his dad, or as an evangelical and this film is itself. Like, and so I think there's something about the ways that no matter... the film is a kind of multifaceted mirror that however you hold it, it's going to point back at you in a way.
Totally.
Through some other person. And so those levels of difference.
It's like if it would have been interesting to just show some of the Sentinelese people just standing on the shore, one could also see that John Chau was just hanging out with his brand of evangelicalism. Like, he's not doing anything extreme.
Right.
He's taking seriously the very things that he's just internalizing the scripts fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's mundane.
And what
he's not fringe or exceptional.
Yeah.
He's doing the thing.
I was talking to some friends about this.
Makes sense.
Like I don't, people often have, I have these stories about, like, I was at some event and, like, this person, this stranger I've never known, did this thing, and it was very entertaining or funny, and it makes a good story. So I tell the story over and over again, right? And that person, like, there's a story I tell about a guy I observed at Bonnaroo years ago. Right?
Everybody needs a Bonnaroo story.
Right. And I tell this story about this guy all the time, right? Okay. And that guy does not know that he has existed for 20 years in these stories I've told.
Yeah, you should. He deserves some kind of commission.
Right? Like, and
conversation commission.
But the flip side is we don't, like, there's a good chance that every one of us is that person in somebody else's story.
Sure.
And we'll never know it. Right? Like, I don't know. I find that fascinating to me. Like, to me, that's like, I don't know. You're
no, I'm totally
that's
with
incredibly
you.
normal.
No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Like, that's absolutely.
But we'll never get to know that.
Yes.
Right. I think it's the same thing here. Like, we'll never, like the Sentinelese story
Yes.
of this guy that brought fish we already had.
Yes.
Versus this other guy, to a generation earlier who brought a bunch of stuff for a long time and then hung out one day.
And then hung out for a minute. Yeah.
We don't know, if that story still gets told, if that was an important story, if it mattered or not. Like,
no, totally.
So, I mean, yeah. That's right. That's just a wild thought. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Like, I get it, like how we tell stories. But just then what you're saying, as I hear it, is like who we even decide to tell them about in the first place is its own intervention. It's its own editorial decision.
Yeah. So
totally. Was there anything else that you want to talk about?
No. What's your
takeaway? I mean, we've talked about it already, but I think we've got to think about how our descriptive efforts and contact motivations are really about ourselves. Like I think that we tend to, and we talk about this in, our scholarly discourse a lot, but like I think that one of the ways in which things like National Geographic comes to have the long history that it had before it ever got to the boardroom table where they're like, oh, maybe these things don't really age so well. Like the fact that it is because, at least in part, we tend to think of descriptions as neutral interpretive actions. Like that if I describe your shirt as yellow, I'm not making a judgment claim. I'm not saying anything. It's mustard. Exactly. I'm not projecting anything. Yeah. I'm just observing. I'm just describing. And one of the things that I think this documentary brings to the fore is that even our descriptive efforts are very much narrative tales that we tell that implicitly or explicitly center ourselves as protagonists or our perspectives and ways of seeing the world.
Yeah.
And we should think about that.
Yeah. I mean, similarly, I mean, I really liked the way it ended and Everett's whole thing about the happy ending for the Sentinelese is that no one knows their story. Like, so, I mean, I think my takeaways are some stories just aren't ours, whoever we are.
Yeah, sure.
To tell. And that's okay. And that's also, I think, a challenge to like late capitalist modernity. Like the idea of like there are things that we should not know.
Yeah.
Right? Like no one ever stands up and is like, we should stop space exploration.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
like
I think people have said that, but yeah.
Well, not for the reasons of like, not because it's a moral imperative to stop exploring space. Like we should just keep to ourselves.
I see. Okay.
Or we should stop exploring the bottom of the ocean. Like there's something about the logic of
discovery
the logic of discovery that
knowledge for its own sake or whatever.
That is we think of it like it's gravity, but it's not.
And knowledge is never for its own sake. It's always for our sake. Any knowledge that you acquire or possess is for your sake. Like, is that fair to say? I don't know. Now I need to think that because it's a pretty universalizing claim.
I would say it could be for our sake, however we draw that.
Yeah. But like even your story about the dude at Bonnaroo, to take nothing. I mean, like you should tell this story. Whatever. We're all telling stories about all the people all the time, but like that's not your story to tell. But it is, except it's about you. Right. You know what I mean?
It's about my experience of seeing this guy at Bonnaroo. So like what he was going through, why he was doing what he was doing.
Yeah. Like he is not. So yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Even now, I refuse to tell the story about the man. Just to make the point.
I'm not asking for it just because I feel like
I'm sure there are people listening who are like, what the hell did the guy do? You will never know. We can't all know all of the stories.
Anyway, what's your cult favorite? Or
speaking of storytelling, so if you are listening to this and you are within driving distance of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, next December, you should look out. There's at Druid City Brewing Company where I kill time. Every December they have there's this tour of Huntsville based or North Alabama based musicians, singer-songwriters. They call it like singer-songwriters in the round.
Okay.
And it's the last 2 years that I've gone, it's been Wanda from Wanda Band, Caleb Elliott, Jay Burgess from the Pollies, and Doc Daly.
Okay.
And what I love about it, the show, is they all sit up there, all four of them, and they go down the row, each playing a song, just like on guitar, and they'll talk about where the song came from. They'll tell you all these stories about it. So it's this very much a thing of like, it is telling stories. They're centering themselves, but it's really just lovely.
Yeah.
And so someone knocked at the door, but I will ignore them because we're recording. So coming out of that, I really liked Caleb Elliott, who's one of the musicians, has a couple new singles out and an album from 2023 called Weed, Wine, and Time. Plays guitar and cello, but he plays cello in a lovely way.
He plays cello, but he plays it in a lovely way.
Okay.
You didn't say that about the guitar. Well, I think the cello is the best.
I think the cello is great. If you had told me 10 years ago this guy plays cello, I'd be like, okay. Like I wouldn't have been into it.
Okay.
So I guess I'm just like, I had to be converted to being pro. My father-in-law played cello,
so
but anyways. Yeah.
This episode is really about your dad, I think.
It's a father-in-law.
Oh, father-in-law. Sorry.
No. So Caleb's stuff is great. I really like it. I bought his album, and I think you should all go listen to him on Spotify. And
perfect.
You can also find he has a Patreon where he puts up new stuff as it comes out. But Caleb Elliott, Huntsville or North Alabama musician.
Yeah. Excellent.
Go check his stuff out.
Well, you know how I like to try to find connective tissue to attach our conversation to my cult favorite. So my cult favorite is Blair Braverman. She is an adventurer and writer and professional dog musher about town whose take on just the relationship between humans and their natural environment is one that I really appreciate. Because it's basically like engage, go out, explore, respect, understand that none of it's about you. Like whether or not you die in an avalanche, the
avalanche doesn't care.
It doesn't care. And that's really a kind of comfort in a pretty powerful way, because it's not actually about the grit of the human spirit. There are all sorts of incredible stories that exist about adventurers who make it out of like extreme scenarios, and all sorts of stories where they don't, and they are no less incredible as like adventuring talents or prepared wilderness people, or it just. So I really appreciate like just the way that she talks about what it means to live in nature and engage with kind of extreme scenarios that we find ourselves in. And she's written a novel that I think is really cool that people should read, and a memoir too. But her most recent book from this year, just a couple of months ago, it was published, is a children's book called The Day Leap Soared. It's about a dog sled puppy named Leap, but it's about really like teamwork and interreliance and self-acceptance. And so if you're looking for like a little holiday gift for a child in your life, I recommend The Day Leap Soared. It is delightful and beautifully illustrated, and it's really cool.
Great.
So
there
you go.
Yeah. We have a book about Balto. We don't have any book. That's one.
Oh yeah.
Balto.
Is that the one that takes that's the like takes like the polio vaccine or something? And she tells the story of Balto to, of course, my beloved Sarah Marshall on You're Wrong About. She's a friend, and Sarah Marshall. So she appears on You're Wrong About, that podcast.
I believe
a few times.
I believe I looked this up after reading the Balto book to my daughter because I was curious. But Balto is taxidermied in the Natural History Museum in Cleveland, Ohio. Huh. He was taken on tour after he made it famous and horribly treated by a promoter. Shocked. And so the people of Cleveland raised money to buy him his freedom.
Interesting.
And he was in the Cleveland Zoo for a long time, and then was now taxidermied.
Interesting.
I think that's right. This is off the top of my head.
Well, you should go listen to that episode. It's a really good one. But she tells lots of survival stories on that podcast and others, of course. But go get her new book.
Sounds great. All right. I lost my notes.
Thanks for listening to Cult Favorite, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Cult Favorite. Subscribe to the podcast, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Leave us a rating and review. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Cult Favorite. If we're in your Spotify Wrapped, please tell me. Special thanks to the REL Digital Lab and the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Alabama for production assistance. The views in this episode are our own as experts and researchers.
You have to say that again. Just put it in at the end as well. We said that already.
Put it both places. Okay. Well, it's in the end. I'm
making sure.
I am.
You got to make sure.
I am full Ron Burgundy. Like whatever's on the on the sheet, I'm going to read.
Next time we'll talk Grizzly Man. I'm excited.
Yeah, Grizzly Man should be good. I've never. Yeah.
Another sad end to an adventurous tale. Well, I mean, depending on your perspective, I guess. I don't know.
How does it end? Don't tell me. I don't know.
Oh, I won't tell you. Okay.
I think I know.
Bye.
Bye.